we're trying to take into consideration whenever we think about things we'd like to do in the town. What's everybody else doing? We don't want to duplicate anything, and certainly the YMCA is very active, and with the opening of the Integrated Youth Services Center, it was a huge opening for them, and just to hear what they've got in mind. So I think that was probably the highlight in terms of issues that we listened to last night. We did talk about so many different things. I won't say they weren't all important, but certainly the YMCA presentation stood out.
And of course, the YMCA is taking on a greater and greater role in the whole county of Cumberland in recent years. It's always had an impact, certainly, but they make presentations as well to the Cumberland municipality, and even some impact in the town of Oxford for a fact. And now you mentioned about the youth place, that's an involvement with the provincial government as well. So the Y is becoming a centermost point, a central meeting place, a central gathering for purposes place, not just for the town anymore.
Yeah, there's a high confidence level in the management team and the board of the Y in what they're doing, and that makes such a big difference when it comes to getting projects done. And so kudos to all of them. They were doing a fantastic job, and including all the volunteers that are involved.
Now, having said all of that, I do recall there was a fair bit of debate and questions about what you call your sign rental policy. And I learned something from that. You know, you go into the stadium, for example, and there's all kinds of advertising signs as you come in and through the corridors and the stairways and so on. Then, of course, around on the boards and on the walls, revenue for the town. But what I did not know is that you have community organizations sell those signs on your behalf, and they can generate a bit of a commission for themselves, a little bit of income for themselves. How long has that been going on? It was news to me.
Oh, my goodness. We put that in place, I'm going to say 14 years ago, 15 years ago, give or take, when we were establishing new agreements with the Rambler organization and just trying to find ways for not just the Ramblers, but also minor hockey, skating club, and anyone, quite frankly, that can sell signs. But the focus, of course, was on the users of the arena and an opportunity for them to raise money.
And, of course, that's dear to the heart of Hal Davidson, the deputy mayor. Hockey is part of his blood, you might say. And he asked a number of questions about who was really taking advantage of the opportunity of being your sales agent on this one. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he and I both seemed a bit surprised that the answer to the question in terms of how much minor hockey may have sold to the benefit of the stadium and to the minor hockey, and the answer was zero. And we were a bit surprised.
Yeah. I think surprised is probably the right word. For me, I wasn't as much surprised because minor hockey executives change over time, and as time goes on, some things that were known by someone don't get passed on to the organization, and so I don't think that when you have continual change in an organization, whereas the Ramblers, they have an agreement in place, it's a contract, they know the ins and outs of what they can and can't do, and of course one of them is sign sales, and so they're the ones that have taken advantage, I guess, or used the sign policy as an opportunity. But I think we'll probably communicate again to both minor hockey and skating club the opportunity as well, just in case the current executive isn't aware that that's available to them.
Now, it's only the people who use the ice facility that have the opportunity to be your agent in this. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's as far as I know. That's the situation. So the focus, of course, is on those users of the stadium.
And is it fair for me to ask how much money could they possibly make from selling those signs? Is it fair to make that a public statement?
Boy, I wish I knew the answer, but I don't know how much they raise. So just one thing I'm sure that it's worthwhile. Otherwise, the Ramblers wouldn't be doing it. So there's got to be some value in it.
All right, I would change topics here. The active transportation plan was discussed briefly, and active transportation is a sore point for people outside the town, and yet they depend to a large extent on the town having something in place. So is this not an opportunity for a little more sharing with the county, perhaps?
Perhaps. We're actually going to meet with Mayor Gilroy and CEO Greg Harrett tomorrow, and that's one of the topics that I put on the agenda to have a conversation about is active transportation.
Because the transportation is often identified as one of the greatest barriers to people accessing public services, perhaps, or accessing healthcare services, accessing shopping opportunities. And we don't really see a major concerted consistent sort of transportation plan. I know we have transportation activities. I know we do. But I think we're quite a ways away from really calling it, a complete service.
Yeah. One of the things that's it was on the consent agenda last night. So we didn't really talk about it because council approved it as part of that agenda, but it is the transit feasibility study. So we've given the CAO approval to proceed with the next steps for our transit study, and that's the $50,000 that we're putting towards that. So getting funding from the federal government, hopefully, and just get on with it in order for us to establish some sort of system in the town. And I know that Mayor Gilroy's even mentioned to me about, can we get that coming out to the hospital and that sort of thing. So, in fact, Mayor Gilroy just said, what else can we do? But those are conversations we'll have to have in the future.
Well, we're seeing more and more of that collaboration, and it started going back, I think, under Murray Scott as the mayor, recognizing that there's no need for both municipalities to reinvent the wheel. And there can be a lot of things in collaboration without having any fear of, wanting to amalgamate into some regional municipality. It's not about that. But why spend money when you can share money?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
Now, speaking of money, you also talked about various grants to community organizations and so on. In that was the Cumberland Museum Society that you do give some monies to on a fairly regular basis. But they came with a special pitch. They wanted a commitment, of sizable commitment, of consistent funding over the next 4 years. And the recommendation from staff was that you not do that, and instead you're going to seek more information, bring it forward perhaps at the next council meeting. What's the background on that?
Well, the challenge that the Cumberland Museum has, and they've been trying to deal with, is the lack of, I'm going to say, funding to keep the doors open on a more regular basis. One of the things that we heard from tourism, at least when we're speaking to the folks out at the Tourist Bureau, was that when they're sending people to Amherst to look at things in the town and around Cumberland County, the museum isn't normally open on the weekends, and so it's just one of those missed opportunities, and so. They're trying to find ways that they can fund that sort of operation, plus other things that they want to do. And unfortunately, the type of request that they've asked for isn't something that the town would do. However, that being said, there are community support grants that organizations do submit, and maybe there's another way to help them. So I think that both Cumberland and Amherst need to talk about how we can take advantage of the Cumberland Museum and its uses, and how we can promote it, and see what the province can do as well. Because we really don't have much say in the operation of the museum. They do have a board that's trying to maintain things, and they're doing a great job. I must say, I drove by there yesterday, and things are looking great. It's one of those locations where all the prom folks that go to prom, they go there for their pictures and those kinds of things. So it's ready for that this coming month, but also it's the place to go when you want to hear about the history of and special stories that go on about Cumberland County.
Well, it's a special place that you go to for special things, and as a consequence, people kind of forget about museums, and this is not unique to Amherst. Museums are often very much underfunded and on the brink of disaster, you might say. The problem with it is it's not just a simple matter of fixing the building. They are curators of a very, very wealthy, a very, very valuable collection. And if you don't have a building to show the collection, if you don't have people who know what they're showing, and so on, then you really have nothing. But the value of the collectibles that are contained in museums would astound people, and we take it for granted. And you're right.
We do.
Tourists would come to town and, make that one of their stops because they can find out all about your town, its history, and the high points, even the low points. But we take it for granted. It's one of those things where, we don't even know what's in our own backyard, and sometimes we ignore it at its peril.
Yeah, another one is Ray Colson, and he takes care of the North Novies Regimental Museum at the Armories here in Amherst. And
a fantastic example.
You want to see an incredible exhibit and history. You go there as well, and it would you would be amazed for a couple of hours just going through there and seeing the history.
Well, I don't want to sound like we're running an advert here for the museums, but I think the problem with it is, and I'm guilty too, is that you go and you make a special trip to the museum, and then for the rest of your life say, I've been there, I've done that.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And you're thinking, well, it doesn't change, but in fact they do change. But more than that, when you go through a museum, you cannot possibly see everything in one visit. And every time I get dragged back to a museum, and I admit that that's the case, every time I get dragged back, I find something new that I missed before. And I find myself talking about it for the next number of weeks to people. Maybe I'm sending them to the museum. I don't know. But we take it for granted. It's kind of sad. And no question, I was really appreciative of the fact that your people were very sensitive to the need of the museum. But as you pointed out, they were asking for funding to keep it alive. And that's not the role of the town, right?
That's correct, yeah. But, there's got to be other ways, right? So that's the thing to do. We got to talk about how we can help.